World War II shaped the lives of a generation. The war broke families apart, brought communities together, and turned a depressed economy into an industrial machine. On the home front, citizens sold war bonds and collected scrap metal for the factories. Friends were made and lost as a generation of boys was sent into combat. Penn State Public Broadcasting invited those who lived this history to share their stories of World War II.
My name's Robert Pat Davy. I was in the 10th Air Force overseas. It was commanded by Louis Mountbatten, a British commander. And because we were in India, that was his district that he had. And I was in the 492nd Bomb Group and the 7th Bomb Squadron. On February the 14th of 44, I went to Miami Beach, Florida, for basic training for the aviation cadets. Well, that was classification, and while I was there, the big push was on in Germany for daylight bombing, and they were losing so many crews and gunners especially, they were losing a lot of. So President Roosevelt said that they should take a whole class of pilots, co-pilots, bombardiers, and navigators, and send them to gunnery school. So they sent me to Laredo, Texas. That's on the border there, and it was a B24 gunnery school. And I graduated from that, and I was shipped down to Marshfield, California, which is at Riverside. And at Riverside, they put the crews together, and that's where they gelled right there for your overseas training. And we still didn't know where we were going, but we thought we were headed for England when we were headed in that direction instead of the South Pacific. Well, they got us up at 10 o'clock one night and said, you'll be flying out at midnight. We went down to the Azore Islands. So once we were out over the Atlantic, they opened the orders up, and they were for Karachi, India. So we landed on the Azores, and we were there overnight and went to Marrakech, North Africa, and Marrakech to Tunis, Tunis to Benghazi, Benghazi to Cairo. And at Cairo, we waited a couple of days, and then they sent us across the Suez over to Abadan, Iran. And we were in Abadan just one day, and then we shipped out of there and went to Karachi, India. And there it was shots again for different diseases that you would encounter in India. And that was in December we got there. And the next day they sent us out after we got our shots and things. They sent us out to New Delhi and Agra. We went to Agra. We went to the Taj Mahal at Agra, and then flew down to our base at Asansol, India. And at Asansol, we got there about noon, and we were the first crew for replacements that they had over there. And those guys thought, boy, this is a Christmas gift. And the crew was coming in that one of them could come home after they had served their 25 missions. Well, we were there. We got there at noon, and they had a Christmas dinner. And the Christmas dinner was bear and deer meat. They had been up in the Himalayas and hunted. They'd sent 3 or 4 of them up, and they killed a couple of deer and a bear. So that's what we had, and then that's where we flew our missions. From there down over the Andaman Islands and down into Burma and India, China. We flew out of there. We really had a sigh of relief when we found out we were going to India. We went in and we went to briefing that morning, and they told us we were going down to a place called Hiho. And Hiho had oil fields, and the Japanese were shipping the oil out by train, and we were going after the tunnels and the railroad bridges and tracks in the area. We didn't go in over the oil fields. Another squadron went over the oil fields. But we got there, and the group in front of us went in, and they were loaded with frag bombs. They were fragment. They were like a hand grenade, only bigger, and they dropped those on the anti-aircraft guns so that they would be thrown off. Well, I looked ahead, and man, I'll tell you, we were in at 18,000 feet, and I was freezing. But whenever I saw what was going on, the sweat just started to roll off of me. And hey, anybody can say they weren't scared. Man, I was scared because I figured, how can anyone fit through that? The flak coming up, the sky was just black, and they were firing it. And a couple of the planes got hit and pulled off. They pulled out of the formation and went on their own. And after you never had flak and aircraft and fighters at the same time. You'd have fighters going in, and then you'd get the flak, and then the fighters would be on the other side waiting for you to come out. Well, we get up there after they had dropped their frag bombs. They were shooting sort of erratic to what they were in the first place. And, hey, you went through, but there was anti-aircraft fire every place. You were mighty happy to make it, to pull through. I don't know whether you ever got used to it or not. I guess you did toughen up to it, though. Each one was tough, and toward the end it was getting tougher because the Japanese were pulling back, and we were flying further on the missions. Like the one mission we flew was to Bangkok, Siam, and we went in there on 4th of July, and that was 18 hours and 5 minutes flying time. That's for a B-24. That was stretching it. We landed on the way back, and we dropped the bombs, and it was like 4th of July, like the fireworks going off, because they didn't expect us, and there wasn't too much anti-aircraft fire because they didn't expect us coming in at that time. So we come back. On the way back, we had to land at a place called Cox's Bazar. And Cox's Bazar was down on the Burma coast next to the Indian Ocean. It was a British-held airfield, and we pulled in there, and these guys, it's British, said to us, "Boy, you came the right day. We're having something that's good today." They had Vienna sausages and tomato sauce. But you flew about every 4 days you would be out. You didn't fly every day. The British pulled out of Rangoon in such a hurry that they left their radar-controlled anti-aircraft guns there. And you flew in, it was like a wagon wheel. You would go in it on, say, the spokes in a wagon wheel. You would go in at 1 o'clock, and you would come out over at 4 o'clock. That was the pattern you flew. You were in and out at a different pattern. And they used to say Rangoon at noon because the sun was in the rise. And that was, that mission was tough. And you had fighters, and then you'd get them out, and you had fighters waiting for you, and they hit us. We were hit. I mean, really hit. But we made her, though. The Japanese started putting prisoner of war camps close close to your target area, and on this railroad from Rangoon to Mandalay and up to Momaine, they every tunnel they'd have a building there that you would think maybe would be a prisoner of war camp. Maybe it was, and maybe it wasn't. You didn't know for sure because I'll tell you, the information that we got back wasn't really accurate from the people that were gathering information for us. But the guys that tell us about flying up to China over the hump, and they flew gas up for a day, and we'd fly gas up for a day or two, and then we'd go up and fly a mission from up there. we'd go into to Shanghai, and we'd put up there for a day and come back over. That flying over the Himalayas was they hated that worse than flying a mission over a target area. And then I'd say Fort Dufferin down at Mandalay. The walls were so thick on Fort Dufferin they were trying to break through them, and the B-25s were going in and skip bombing them, and we would go in and drop 1,000-pounders on them. And we finally broke through so the Army could get into the city. But the funny thing about Mandalay at the airport, there at the air base, was it was fully set. It was just full of airplanes down there sitting there, fighters, but none ever come up. Never any. We never had a fighter come up on us at Mandalay. When the war was over, we found out why. They didn't have any carburetors. Because the line for the supply line was so long at that point, they had to bring them from Bangkok across the whole way over, and they were afraid to bring big ships into Rangoon because we would know they were there and we'd go in and bomb them. But yeah, everybody had a story to tell you about which was the toughest and which was the easy ones. And we flew propaganda missions out of a place called a SAM. We would, they had these boxes full of papers of surrender, and at this point you can, because the war, you're losing the war, and it was just propaganda is what it was. And you would go over the towns and you'd drop that stuff down, and whether it did any good or not, I don't know. But whenever I was up at a SAM there and we were ready to come home, I went into the shower, and I was taking a shower, and I come out of the shower, and when I come out, here stood a guy from Beech Creek, which is 1 mile from Blanchard where I lived, and he said, "I didn't know you were here." And I said, "Yeah, I've been here." He said, "Hey, after I get my shower, I'll come down and we'll talk about things." And I said, "I won't be there. I'm going home." He said, "No, you can't be going home. I just got here." But, yeah, and he gave me his wife's address, and he wrote a letter, because our mail, that wasn't like today where they call home. We would write a letter, and then they would cut part of it out. The censors would cut it out. By the time it got home, you couldn't tell them where you were or anything. But yeah, this Dane Miller from Beech Creek was there. He was just pulled in that day. After the war was over, they brought the planes back, but the only ones that came back on the plane was the navigator, the pilot, and the co-pilot, and the engineer and the radio man. The bombardier and all the gunners, they came back. They got on a train. Well, we got on a train up at a SAM. We got on a train there, which was a narrow gauge railroad, open car that weren't Pullmans. They were just cars with seats on. They were open. Sides were open. There was a roof on them. And we came down from up there down to Calcutta. We got to Calcutta. There was no food on the train. When the train would stop at a railroad station, a couple guys would jump off and go in, and we would get sardines and bread. And water was in jugs, clay jugs, and we'd get water. And there was no bathrooms on these trains. Just had to go to the bathrooms right off the side of the train. And we got there, and there was a ship there. And we came home on this boat. It was a Liberty ship. It wasn't much of a boat, but we were on that, and we left Calcutta, and we went down to an island that was off the coast over there, Ceylon. We fueled up at Ceylon, and whenever we fueled up there, we went into the Red Sea. and come up through the Red Sea. Well, I'd heard of flying fish, and I never saw them. And I just thought it was a myth. There was no such thing as a flying fish. But there really was. They would come out of a wave, and whenever the wave would go up, and they'd break through the wave, and it had big fins on, and it would just glide along, and then we'd go back in the water again. We came through the Suez Canal then, and through the Mediterranean, and by Gibraltar, and we went through there, and we came into New York, and we were the first crew back from the Far East, from CBI, into New York. Well, we got there in the morning. It was just breaking daylight, and we came by the Statue of Liberty, and nothing looked any better than the Statue of Liberty looked to us coming back from over there. And we come into the harbor. They had the fire boats out squirting water, and we pulled into New York. And then they brought us to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey from there, and then into the ones from up my way, in Pennsylvania. We came to Indiantown Gap. And we were in Indiantown Gap for several days, and then they sent us home. And we come home, and we were home for about 30 days, and when we come back, they sent us back to North Carolina again for discharge. I gained the knowledge that I would have never in my life would I have ever been able to pay for an education like I got traveling about halfway around the world, going one way by plane and coming back by boat. And I saw things that I saw the Sphinx, and I saw the pyramids, and I saw the Taj Mahal, and all of those things that are wonders of the world. And I'd have never got to see anything like that. And it was an education that you had to be there and I had no regrets about being there. Somebody had to go, and at that time, you knew who you were fighting. You knew who the enemy was. It wasn't that, like it is today, that you don't know who your friends are and who your enemies are. You knew who the enemy was, and we knew that we were fighting the Japanese, and that's who we were going to encounter, not somebody running up to you and blowing up with a car bomb or something.